He didn't just tell his wife to leave. He grabbed her old suitcase, kicked open the door of their tiny rental house, threw it onto the front porch, and tossed a wrinkled $20 bill at her like garbage. "Here," he said, his voice ice cold. "That's all you need to start somewhere else." Behind him, his girlfriend stood in the doorway, already wearing his wife's favorite sweater, already looking at the house like she owned it. He threw his wife out so he could move his girlfriend into the very house his wife had been secretly paying for all along. The wife he had just thrown away was Sarah Bennett, a quiet, gentle woman who always believed love was more important than money. She had worked hard, given up so much, and paid the rent in secret, while her husband, Derek, bragged to everyone that he was the one taking care of everything. He called her useless, a burden, dead weight. He thought throwing her out with $20 and replacing her with his girlfriend proved he had upgraded his life. He truly believed she had nothing, no savings, no power, no way to fight back. What Derek never knew was this: the woman he kicked out of that small rental house was not just any wife. Sarah was a hidden $200 million heiress, the only daughter of a powerful property empire family. Sarah, the only daughter of a family that quietly owned more buildings than Derek had ever stepped foot in during his entire life. While he celebrated with his girlfriend in the very bedroom Sarah used to cry in, rent was coming due, bills were piling up, and soon, in a quiet lawyer's office, a pen would sign a document that changed everything about who really controlled the roof over his head. What Sarah did when rent was due would leave Derek completely destroyed. This is not just a story about a husband who cheated on his wife. It's about what happens when the person you threw away is the one holding the keys to your future. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Sarah's voice disappear back into silence. When you hit that button, you stand with every person who was underestimated, every partner who was thrown away, and every quiet soul who chose to rise instead of beg. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Sarah Bennett, 29 years old, jerked upright on the park bench like someone waking up from a bad dream. Her breathing was fast, her chest tight, her hands shaking, not from fear, but from the sudden memory of a door slamming somewhere behind her. A neighbor's door this time, not hers. But the sound was sharp enough to cut straight into her nerves, the way certain sounds do when your heart has been broken more than once. She had come here straight from the property office, where she had quietly slipped an envelope of cash across the counter and said, as she always did, "Please don't tell Derek about this. I don't want him feeling pressured." The office manager nodded kindly. Derek still believed the rent somehow paid itself. People walking by the park barely noticed her, but if they had looked closely, they would have seen a woman holding her life together by thin threads. Beautiful in a quiet, simple way, dressed plainly, hair tied back, eyes carrying a storm of emotions she refused to speak about. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to calm herself, to steady her hands. Sarah opened her worn notebook, the one she used to calm herself, and began sketching a building. Strong pillars, glass balconies, clean, beautiful lines. Anyone watching might think she was just a hobby artist passing time between work shifts. But Sarah wasn't just drawing. This was muscle memory. Because Sarah Bennett wasn't a nobody. She was the only daughter of Thomas Bennett, a powerful real estate owner whose name alone could shake entire markets. But no one at this park knew that. Not the children running past, not the couple arguing near the fountain, not even her husband. A flash of memory took her, not gentle, not invited. Younger Sarah, maybe 21 years old, stood in a massive office made of marble and glass. The air was cold, the kind of cold that smelled of power and high expectations. Her father stood behind a heavy desk, silver hair, stern eyes, the type of man who built skyscrapers like building blocks. "I don't want that life, Dad," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "And what life do you want, Sarah?" asked Thomas Bennett. He wasn't yelling, that would have been easier. He was disappointed, far worse. "I want a life where someone loves me for me," she said, her fist clenched. "Not the money, not the name, not what comes with being a Bennett." He exhaled slowly, the way a man does when choosing between protecting his daughter and letting her learn heartbreak the hard way. "Then hide your money," he said. The words were both a blessing and a warning. "Hide everything until you're sure. But remember," his eyes hardened, holding hers with the weight of a truth he wished wasn't real. "People show their true colors when they think you have nothing." It was the sentence that shaped the next 8 years of Sarah's life. The sentence that led her straight to Derek Hayes, her husband. Derek, 33 years old, charming smile, confident voice, the kind of man that made others feel smaller without raising his voice. People thought he was ambitious, driven, a natural leader. Sarah once thought so too. Back then, he had treated her like a treasure, gentle, caring, endlessly curious about her simple background, a curiosity she mistook for love, not noticing how his questions always circled back to money, family background, assets. She believed she found someone who saw her soul, but in truth, he saw opportunity. She didn't want to admit that yet, not to herself, not out loud. So now here she sat on this quiet bench, pretending she was just another woman with a notebook, when in reality she was the quiet owner of a fortune bigger than Derek could imagine. She had walked away from it for love. She'd taken a simple job, paid rent and cash, pretended to be average because she wanted something real. And the man she gave everything to would soon throw her out with only $20. A strong gust of wind snapped a loose page from her notebook. Sarah reached for it, but someone stepped on the paper before she could grab it. She froze when she looked up. It was Derek, and he wasn't supposed to be here. He had told her that morning he was stuck at work, handling extra hours. Yet here he was in the middle of the afternoon at the park, and he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a tall, polished woman with dark hair, wearing a fitted blouse. Her hand rested lightly on Derek's arm, as if it had been there many times before. The bright smile on his face wasn't meant for her, and that was the first silent warning of the cracks about to form. Derek's sudden appearance in front of Sarah hit her like a punch to the stomach. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not today, not now, and certainly not smiling the way he was. Wide, bright, almost fake, like the world existed only to make him happy. But the real shock wasn't Derek. It was the woman standing beside him, a tall, polished woman with dark hair, early 30s, wearing a fitted blouse and expensive perfume that filled the air with confidence. She wasn't trying to hide her interest in Derek. She stood close, much too close. Her hand brushed his arm casually, as if testing boundaries she already planned to cross. Sarah's heart raced. Derek hadn't noticed her yet, or maybe he had and simply didn't care. The sketch page still lay beneath his shoe. Before she could speak, before her brain could make any sense of the moment, her vision pulled her backward, away from the bench, away from the woman, away from the present, straight into the memory of the day she met him. It had been a warm afternoon at the community center, a place Sarah volunteered at quietly to stay connected to something simple, honest, and human. The center was a modest building, where children painted on paper taped to walls, laughter bouncing through every room. Sarah worked there to feel normal, to feel free from the Bennett empire, to feel like she could breathe without someone judging her worth. Back then, she was 24 years old, gentle, reserved, hopeful. That afternoon, a man walked in carrying a box of donated art supplies. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, smiling as if he walked into sunlight. His name was Derek Hayes, 28 years old, charming from a distance and dangerously smooth up close. "Is this where the art donations go?" he asked, lifting the box as if it weighed nothing. Sarah remembered how she smiled back, soft, surprised, because few people looked at her with such open warmth. She guided him inside, showing him the shelves, introducing him to the children. He watched her interact with them, noticed how she knelt down to match their height, how patient she was, how she listened more than she spoke. "You're good with them. You don't see that often." Those words sank deep because he said them like they actually meant something. Over the next few weeks, Derek volunteered more often. Not every day, but enough to be noticed. He brought snacks for the kids, asked Sarah questions about her artwork, praised her sketches, laughed at her quiet jokes, and looked at her with attention she mistook for honesty. Sarah thought she was seeing kindness. Derek thought he was seeing opportunity. But she didn't know that then. The memory softened, moving into a slower, quieter moment. Sarah recalled a late evening months later when she and Derek walked through the center after closing. Children's paintings, bright suns and crooked houses covered the walls. She felt safe there, tucked away from her family name, from expectations, from judgment. Derek had paused beside her, watching her clean brushes. "You ever think about building a life with someone?" he asked casually. "A life?" she repeated, caught off guard. "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "Two people starting from nothing, supporting each other, growing together. I always wanted that." Those words struck her right in the place she tried hardest to protect, a place aching from loneliness, a place tired of being seen as a bank account rather than a person. She didn't tell him she was the heir to a massive property fortune. She didn't tell him she had walked away from that world. She didn't tell him she was scared that no one would ever love her without conditions. Instead, she said quietly, "I think that sounds like something I've always wanted too." And Derek smiled like he had already won something. Now, in the present, on the park bench, Sarah blinked back into reality. The shock of seeing Derek with another woman still burned inside her chest. Derek finally looked at her. His smile dropped for only a second, but she caught it. "Sarah," he said, pretending to be surprised. "Hey, I didn't know you were here." The dark-haired woman beside him tilted her head, studying Sarah with polite curiosity that felt sharp. "This is Jessica," Derek added, quickly, almost too quickly. "She's from the office. We were just going over some work ideas." Jessica gave a small, practiced smile. "Hi, I've heard a lot about you." Sarah's fingers tightened on her notebook. Derek stepped closer, eyes flicking to the fallen page beneath his shoe. He lifted his foot, picked it up, and glanced at the drawing, a building with luxury lines he couldn't quite place. "You're out early today," he said. "We finished up work nearby and decided to walk through the park." But he had told her hours ago he was working late across town. The lie hung between them, thin but visible. Sarah forced herself to breathe. "You said you were stuck at the office." Derek didn't flinch. "Yeah, then plans changed. You know how it is." Jessica shifted closer to him. Just a fraction. Enough. And then Derek said the sentence that changed everything. "I've been meaning to ask you more about your past, your family. You never talk about them." His tone was soft, too careful. He added, almost casually, "Sometimes I wonder if there's anyone who could help us out a bit with, things being tight." The fear she thought she had buried began to rise again, because this wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was pressure. And standing beside him, hearing her full name for the first time, Jessica repeated it quietly, as if tasting it. Sarah Bennett, right. The questions he asked that day would soon reveal cracks she never expected. Cracks leading straight to the first sign of betrayal.
The phone lit up again. It was nearly midnight, and the sudden glow cut through the dark bedroom like lightning, jolting Sarah awake. Derek, lying beside her, reacted too fast, snatching the phone, rolling his body away, shoulders stiffening in a way that screamed guilt. Sarah shot upright, heart pounding. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how a loving husband behaved. And the speed, the panic, the way he clutched the phone as if protecting it from her, shocked her like a slap. "Who was that?" she asked softly, her voice still thick from sleep. Derek didn't turn around. "No one," he said quickly. "Work message." But his tone was wrong, too sharp, too rushed. The tension in the moment hung between them, thick and choking. Then slowly, Sarah forced herself to breathe, letting her heartbeat settle. She lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Inside, her thoughts spiraled. In the weeks after the park incident, things had changed. Subtly at first, then sharply. The texts didn't stop, they increased. Late nights, early mornings, sometimes he stepped out onto the porch to answer them, whispering. Sometimes he walked into the bathroom and locked the door. Sarah never confronted him with anger. It wasn't her nature. She was gentle, raised to stay calm, to observe before reacting. But she noticed everything. Derek's new cologne, the shirts he ironed more carefully, the way he lingered in the mirror before leaving the house, the way he casually dropped Jessica's name now and then. "Jessica thinks I should push for a promotion. Jessica says the office might restructure soon." And more importantly, the way he hid his phone every time she walked into a room. One night, she passed the half-open door of the guest room and froze. Derek's voice drifted out in a low whisper, an excited whisper. "She'll believe anything. Relax." Everything in her body locked. "She'll believe anything?" The words were a knife. And the worst part, the tone wasn't annoyed, it wasn't stressed, it was confident, like he was proud of how easy she was to fool. She stepped closer without thinking, her breath shallow, feet silent on the carpet. "Yeah," he continued, voice lowering. "I told you she doesn't question things. That's why this works." "This? What this?" Her hand covered her mouth, her stomach twisted so hard she felt sick. She didn't hear the rest. Her mind was already spinning. Who was he talking to? Why did he need someone to relax? What exactly did he think she believed? She stepped back quietly, but the floor creaked. Nathan stopped talking. "Sarah," he called out sharply. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and pretended to have just walked into the hall. Derek stepped out of the room, phone in hand, face too calm. "Everything okay?" he asked. She studied him, really studied him. The tension in his jaw, the faint smirk he tried to hide, the way he angled his body so she couldn't see his phone screen. "Derek," she began softly, "is something going on?" "Going on?" he repeated, raising his eyebrows. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "I heard you, in the guest room. You said someone would believe anything. Were you talking about me?" His expression didn't show guilt, it twisted into irritation. "Oh, come on, you're twisting things. You're paranoid because you grew up sheltered." He said it like a weapon, a direct stab at the childhood she never talked about. "Sheltered," she echoed, stunned. "You don't even know much about my childhood." Derek sighed loudly, shaking his head as if she was the problem. "You overthink. It's just how you are. You weren't raised the way the rest of us were. You had things handed to you, people protecting you. You're not used to real-world stress." He didn't know about the inheritance. He didn't know about the empire. But he still used the exact fear she carried inside, that if anyone saw where she came from, they'd never see her again. She swallowed hard. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe she misunderstood the call. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was overthinking. Her mind began to protect her heart, as it always did. "That's not fair," she whispered. Derek wrapped an arm around her shoulder and kissed her forehead, a gesture that looked loving but felt like a cover-up. "You worry too much," he murmured. "There's nothing going on." But his hand never relaxed around his phone. And Sarah, wanting to believe him, wanting the marriage she dreamed of, convinced herself to let it go.
Later that night, when he stepped into the shower, his phone lit up again on the nightstand. A message preview appeared. The same name she'd begun to notice besides so many notifications. Jessica. A heart emoji and the words, "I miss you already." Sarah's breath shattered, and before she could decide whether to open it or walk away, the bathroom door handle turned and the door began to open. Behind that door was the first undeniable truth and the beginning of a betrayal she never saw coming.
The phone lit up again. It was nearly midnight, and the sudden glow cut through the dark bedroom like lightning, jolting Sarah awake. Derek, lying beside her, reacted too fast, snatching the phone, rolling his body away, shoulders stiffening in a way that screamed guilt. Sarah shot upright, heart pounding. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how a loving husband behaved. And the speed, the panic, the way he clutched the phone as if protecting it from her, shocked her like a slap. "Who was that?" she asked softly, her voice still thick from sleep. Derek didn't turn around. "No one," he said quickly. "Work message." But his tone was wrong, too sharp, too rushed. The tension in the moment hung between them, thick and choking. Then slowly, Sarah forced herself to breathe, letting her heartbeat settle. She lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Inside, her thoughts spiraled. In the weeks after the park incident, things had changed. Subtly at first, then sharply. The texts didn't stop, they increased. Late nights, early mornings, sometimes he stepped out onto the porch to answer them, whispering. Sometimes he walked into the bathroom and locked the door. Sarah never confronted him with anger. It wasn't her nature. She was gentle, raised to stay calm, to observe before reacting. But she noticed everything. Derek's new cologne, the shirts he ironed more carefully, the way he lingered in the mirror before leaving the house, the way he casually dropped Jessica's name now and then. "Jessica thinks I should push for a promotion. Jessica says the office might restructure soon." And more importantly, the way he hid his phone every time she walked into a room. One night, she passed the half-open door of the guest room and froze. Derek's voice drifted out in a low whisper, an excited whisper. "She'll believe anything. Relax." Everything in her body locked. "She'll believe anything?" The words were a knife. And the worst part, the tone wasn't annoyed, it wasn't stressed, it was confident, like he was proud of how easy she was to fool. She stepped closer without thinking, her breath shallow, feet silent on the carpet. "Yeah," he continued, voice lowering, "I told you she doesn't question things. That's why this works." "This? What this?" Her hand covered her mouth, her stomach twisted so hard she felt sick. She didn't hear the rest. Her mind was already spinning. Who was he talking to? Why did he need someone to relax? What exactly did he think she believed? She stepped back quietly, but the floor creaked. Nathan stopped talking. "Sarah," he called out sharply. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and pretended to have just walked into the hall. Derek stepped out of the room, phone in hand, face too calm. "Everything okay?" he asked. She studied him, really studied him. The tension in his jaw, the faint smirk he tried to hide, the way he angled his body so she couldn't see his phone screen. "Derek," she began softly, "is something going on?" "Going on?" he repeated, raising his eyebrows. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "I heard you, in the guest room. You said someone would believe anything. Were you talking about me?" His expression didn't show guilt, it twisted into irritation. "Oh, come on, you're twisting things. You're paranoid because you grew up sheltered." He said it like a weapon, a direct stab at the childhood she never talked about. "Sheltered," she echoed, stunned. "You don't even know much about my childhood." Derek sighed loudly, shaking his head as if she was the problem.
You overthink. It's just how you are. You weren't raised the way the rest of us were. You had things handed to you, people protecting you. You're not used to real-world stress." He didn't know about the inheritance. He didn't know about the empire, but he still used the exact fear she carried inside, that if anyone saw where she came from, they'd never see her again. She swallowed hard. Maybe he didn't mean it that way. Maybe she misunderstood the call. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she was overthinking. Her mind began to protect her heart, as it always did. "That's not fair," she whispered. Derek wrapped an arm around her shoulder and kissed her forehead, a gesture that looked loving but felt like a cover-up. "You worry too much," he murmured. "There's nothing going on." But his hand never relaxed around his phone. And Sarah, wanting to believe him, wanting the marriage she dreamed of, convinced herself to let it go. Later that night, when he stepped into the shower, his phone lit up again on the nightstand. A message preview appeared. The same name she'd begun to notice beside so many notifications. Jessica. A heart emoji, and the words, "I miss you already." Sarah's breath shattered, and before she could decide whether to open it or walk away, the bathroom door handle turned and the door began to open. Behind that door was the first undeniable truth and the beginning of a betrayal she never saw coming.
The shouting hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Derek, please, can we just talk?" she managed, stepping into the living room with trembling hands. "Talk!" Derek snapped, spinning around so fast she flinched. His eyes were wild, frustrated, angry in a way she had never seen. "I'm done talking, Sarah." His voice filled the house, bouncing off the walls, sharp enough to make her heart jump. The tension in the room was suffocating. Days had passed since she'd found Jessica in their bathroom. She had waited, hoping he would come clean on his own. Instead, he became colder, shorter, more irritable. Now the storm had finally broken open. Derek pointed at a pile of envelopes on the table, unpaid bills. A red past due stamp glared from one of them. "You're holding me back. You are not support me. You don't contribute. You drag me down." Sarah stared at him, stunned. It felt like her brain couldn't process the words fast enough. She worked, she cleaned, she budgeted. She paid rent without him knowing exactly how much it cost, telling the manager never to mention it to Derek. She bought groceries, she covered his missed payments. She supported him quietly, lovingly, thinking they were a team. "Derek, I pay for most of these," she whispered, voice cracking. "You know I do. I've been covering the rent for months." He scoffed. Actually, scoffed. "See, there it is, acting like some hero. You can't even help me properly. You can't give me the life I deserve." The life he deserved. The words were a knife. She swallowed, tears burning behind her eyes. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I've done everything I could. I gave you everything I had." He laughed bitterly. "Everything? You barely have anything, Sarah. You think your little job is enough? You think your sad childhood excuses everything?" She froze. This wasn't frustration. This was cruelty. Cold, sharp, intentional. She took a breath, desperate to save something, anything of the marriage she built with hope and blind love. "Derek," she said quietly, "if something's going on, if there's someone else." His expression didn't flicker. Not guilt, not shame, just annoyance. Then he reached into his pocket. Sarah didn't know what to expect. Maybe his phone, maybe another lie. But what he pulled out was worse, a crumpled, wrinkled $20 bill. He threw it at her feet. "There, that's enough for you to start over somewhere else." Sarah's breath shattered. She stared at the $20 lying by her shoes. It might as well have been a slap across the face. "That's all I owe you," Derek added, "for everything." Her heart broke so loudly inside her chest, she was sure the room could hear it. How can you say that?" she whispered. "I'm your wife."
"Not anymore," he said flatly. And then, footsteps behind him. Sarah lifted her eyes slowly, painfully. Jessica walked out of the bedroom, wearing Sarah's robe. Her robe. The robe Derek gifted her on their first anniversary. The sight had Sarah harder than the $20 ever could. Jessica froze when she saw Sarah, but Derek didn't bother pretending anymore. He stepped closer to Jessica, stood beside her, chose her openly. Sarah's legs felt weak. She reached for the suitcase near the door, not because she planned to leave, but because she needed something to hold on to. It had been half-packed days ago, ever since she'd started to wonder if love should hurt this much. "You promised we'd build a life together," she whispered. Her voice was so small it barely carried. Derek didn't blink. "I found someone who actually wants to," he said. Jessica looked away, suddenly uneasy, but she said nothing. Silence filled the room like thick smoke. Sarah slowly bent down and picked up the crumpled $20. Her hand shook, her breath shook, her heart shook. She looked at Derek one more time, but he was already turning away, already choosing a different future, a different woman, a different life. Sarah stood there with her suitcase, the bill limp in her hand, feeling like the world she had built had just collapsed in front of her. Finally, she whispered, broken, "I loved you." Derek didn't even answer. Sarah opened the front door, stepped out onto the porch, and closed it behind her shaking hands. The street was quiet, cold, too bright. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, on autopilot, she pulled out her phone with numb fingers and called the only person she trusted to open a door without asking questions, Lily. But before she took her first step away, she heard something from inside the house, a sentence, a whisper, barely audible. Derek's voice. "Now that she's gone, you can move in tomorrow." Sarah froze, heart stopping, breath caught in her throat. What she would learn next would break her even more and push her toward a truth she had spent years running from.
Sarah burst into Lily's apartment like someone running from a fire. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't even breathing right. She was simply breaking, quietly, silently, falling apart in a way only a person who has lost everything in one night can understand. Lily, her longtime friend from the community center, rushed from the kitchen the second she saw her. Lily was short, soft-spoken, with kind eyes that always seemed to search a person's soul before their face. She'd seen Sarah tired before, stressed before, but never like this. "Sarah, what happened?" Lily whispered. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. She simply walked inside, dragging the half-packed suitcase behind her. The wheels scraped the floor, a harsh sound that filled the small apartment with a tension Lily had never felt from Sarah before. "Sarah, talk to me," Lily pleaded, but Sarah collapsed onto the sofa instead, curling into herself like someone trying to disappear. Her hands still clutched the crumpled $20 Derek had thrown at her. She didn't even realize she still held it. The intensity slowly drained into numbness, the kind that doesn't let you cry, the kind that makes you stare at nothing for too long. Lily sat beside her, rubbing her back gently. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out," she said softly. Hours passed. The sky outside darkened. The apartment grew quiet. Sarah lay under a blanket on the sofa, eyes open but empty. She wasn't sleeping, she was thinking, replaying every moment of the past few months, every lie, every late-night message, every time Derek hid his phone, every whisper behind closed doors, every time she chose silence instead of confrontation. Every piece connected now, forming the truth she had refused to see. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, once, twice, 3 times. Lily reached for it, glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's a number saved as Mr. Harrison. Who is that?" she asked. Sarah blinked slowly. My family's lawyer," she murmured. Lily hesitated. Why is he calling you this late? Did something happen? Sarah didn't answer, because she already knew. Mr. Harrison never called without reason. He was the only person from her old world who still tried to check on her. When she left the Bennett world, she told him she needed distance. He had respected that, but he'd also promised her father he would keep a quiet eye on her from afar. The buzzing continued until the phone went silent. Sarah turned her face away. She didn't want her past. She didn't want her name. She didn't want the reminder that she'd traded a fortune for a man who saw her as worthless. The silence didn't last long. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a different notification. Lily picked it up, eyes widening. "Sarah, you need to see this." Sarah didn't move. Lily brought the phone to her anyway. On the screen was a new social media post. Derek Hayes, public. A picture of him and Jessica laughing, holding each other, standing inside Sarah's old house. Her couch, her curtains, her life. The caption, "Finally free, no more dead weight, no more leeching." The words punched Sarah straight in the chest. "Leeching," Sarah whispered, voice cracking. "I paid everything." Lily squeezed her hand, anger rising in her voice. "You never deserved this. You chose him over everything. Why would he do this to you?" The question burned because the answer hurt too much. Sarah pulled away slightly, staring at her suitcase, at her notebook peeking from it. As she shifted it, a small white envelope slipped out, old, worn, yellowing around the edges. Her breath caught. It was familiar. She picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a letter from her father, written years ago before she left home. She unfolded it slowly. "If you ever need help, no questions asked, just call." Sarah's eyes blurred. Lily saw her hands shaking. "Sarah, why don't you call him? Why did you cut your family off? You haven't spoken to them in years." Sarah swallowed hard. "Because I chose Derek. I chose him over everything, and I thought he chose me too." The truth tasted bitter. Lily squeezed her hand. "Then maybe it's time," she said gently, "to choose yourself again." Sarah stared at the letter, her father's writing pulling her back into a world she ran from, a world she denied, a world she pretended didn't exist. The Bennett world, the world of power, of wealth, of protection, a world Derek never knew she came from, a world she desperately needed now. Her numbness cracked just slightly, enough for determination to slip through. Sarah picked up her phone with steady hands. Lily watched her, whispering, "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded. She dialed the number printed at the bottom of the letter. The phone rang once, twice, then a deep, familiar voice answered. "Miss Sarah, we've been waiting for your call." Her throat tightened. "Mr. Harrison," she said softly, "I need help." On the other end of the line, Mr. Harrison didn't hesitate. "Then it's time to come home, Miss Bennett. Your father left everything ready for this moment."
The town car stopped so suddenly that Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't even realized her hands were gripping the leather seat until her knuckles turned white. Her body tensed with the same fear she felt the night Derek threw her out. The intensity hit her so fast she had to close her eyes and inhale deeply just to keep from shaking. The driver, sent by Mr. Harrison, opened the door. "Sarah," he said softly. "He's waiting inside." She nodded once, her legs unsteady as she stepped onto the pavement. The building before her was tall, quiet, and private. No sign, no name, nothing to reveal the power hidden inside. It was the kind of place only people with influence knew existed. She entered through glass doors that slid open silently, the air inside cool and still. Her heart thudded in her chest as she walked down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing faintly. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to face the world she abandoned. She wasn't ready to admit how wrong she had been about Derek. But she had no choice now. A woman led her into a private office with floor-to-ceiling windows. At the desk sat Mr. Harrison, her family lawyer for more than 20 years. He stood when she entered. "Sarah," he said gently, "it's been a long time." Mr. Harrison was in his late 50s, sharp-eyed, calm, and carrying the kind of quiet authority that made people lower their voices around him. He'd watched her grow up, watched her run away, and apparently continued watching from a distance as her father had asked. She forced a faint smile. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner." "You called at the right time," he replied, motioning for her to sit. "Your father always believed you would return when you truly needed help." The mention of her father softened her, but also twisted something deep in her chest. Mr. Harrison opened a thick leather file on his desk. "Sarah, before we continue, I need you to see something." He slid a stack of documents toward her: legal papers, certificates, property deeds, account statements. She stared at them confused at first, until she saw her name printed on nearly every page. Sarah A. Bennett, beneficiary, primary heir, estimated estate value $200 million. Her breath hitched. "Is this real?" she whispered. Mr. Harrison folded his hands. "Sarah, your father passed away 3 years ago. He left everything to you. He trusted you to live your own life, but he also trusted that when the time came, you would take responsibility for what was yours." Her fingers shook as she touched the edges of the documents. $200 million. She had walked away from all of it. She had lived in a small rental house with Derek, while the world she left behind held enough power to change entire lives. "But I didn't want this," she whispered, her voice weak. "I didn't want to be that girl." Mr. Harrison nodded gently. "I know, you weren't wrong to want love. You only chose the wrong man." The truth stung harder than anything Derek ever said. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "Mr. Harrison, I let him treat me like nothing. He called me a leech. He said I held him back." Her voice cracked. "All this time, I was the one paying the rent, the bills, everything." He nodded sadly. "Yes, our accounting department manages your trust accounts. We saw the rent and utilities coming from your income, not his. Your father asked us not to interfere unless you were in danger. Derek never contributed. He let you carry the entire household." Sarah closed her eyes, tears finally forming. But they weren't tears of heartbreak. They were tears of clarity. She had been blind. She had been loyal. She had been loving. And she had been deceived. Slowly, she sat straighter in her chair. Mr. Harrison watched her carefully, recognizing the shift in her posture, the quiet strength returning to her expression. "Sarah," he said, "your father left instructions for me. If you ever returned, I was to guide you through your holdings and help you take full control. Your first responsibility is understanding what you own." He reached into his desk drawer. "This," he said, sliding something across the table, "is your real estate portfolio." Sarah blinked in confusion. "Real estate?" He nodded. "Your family owns several properties across the region. Apartment buildings, commercial rentals, private estates. Some are held in companies your father controlled. By accepting the inheritance, you become the controlling owner." She hesitated before opening the folder. Then she saw it. Page after page of properties, addresses, details, but the last entry caught her eye. Her heart nearly stopped. Mr. Harrison tapped the page gently. "One of these buildings," he said quietly, "might interest you." The address was familiar. Too familiar. It was the address of the rental house she had just been thrown out of, Derek's house, their old home. A slow, cold, tingling dread moved through her spine. She looked up at Mr. Harrison, shaken. This is his house?" "It was part of your father's portfolio," he corrected calmly.
On paper, it belongs to one of his holding companies, but now that the estate is being executed, you are the legal heir to that company. He paused. And you can choose whether to step forward as the active owner or let someone else manage it in your name. The room felt suddenly still, very still. A new kind of power, quiet, controlled, dangerous, rose inside her like a second heartbeat. And in that moment, she realized something. Derek had no idea whose roof he was standing under. Mr. Harrison leaned back, his expression unreadable. There is one more step you can take if you wish. We can move that building into a private trust under your direct control. Legally and publicly, you would become his landlord. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel helpless. She felt powerful.
The pen nearly cracked between Sarah's fingers. That was how hard she was gripping it, as she stared down at the final page of the documents spread across Mr. Harrison's polished desk. Her heart pounded harder with every second. The intensity of the moment squeezed her chest. She wasn't signing for revenge. Not yet. She was signing because for the first time in years, she was taking back power she had abandoned. "Sarah," Mr. Harrison said quietly, "you're sure you want to move this building into your personal trust? It will mean your name, or your company's name, appears in the management records. The tenant will feel the change." She nodded slowly. "I don't want him to see my full name yet, but I don't want to hide behind my fear anymore either." He understood. His eyes were calm, serious. "This trust," he said, tapping the papers, "will list you as acting owner and trustee under the company name we created for you. The building has always been part of your inheritance, but tonight we are making you the visible landlord. Management will be updated. Notices will be sent by morning. His lease will fall under your authority." The intensity hung in the room like a held breath. Sarah inhaled deeply, then signed. A single stroke, a single moment, a single decision that shifted everything. When the pen left the page, something inside her changed. For the first time since Derek threw her out, she didn't feel helpless. She didn't feel small. She didn't feel like the discarded woman with only $20 in her hand. She felt steady. Her father had always told her, "Your power is quiet. Use it wisely." She finally understood what that meant. Mr. Harrison gathered the papers and locked them in a secure case. "The trust will assume active ownership in a few hours. The property manager will receive instructions immediately. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you decide what happens next." Sarah nodded, her voice soft. "I don't want to hurt him. I just don't want him to hurt me again." Mr. Harrison studied her face. "You don't need to act out of anger," he said gently. "Truth and consequences have a way of revealing themselves." His words stayed with her as she walked back to the waiting car. Outside, dusk settled. Streetlights flickered on. The world looked peaceful, almost too peaceful for the storm she carried inside. But she wasn't breaking anymore. She was rebuilding, quietly, carefully, powerfully. Meanwhile, inside the house she once called home, chaos was brewing. Derek slammed a drawer shut. "Where is the cash I had here?" he growled, pacing the living room. Jessica, now fully moved in, wearing one of Sarah's old sweaters, rolled her eyes dramatically. "Maybe you spent it. Everything in this place is cheap, Derek. Even the drawers jam." Derek whipped around, annoyed. "Nothing in this house is my fault. Rent is due and I need to make a payment." Jessica crossed her arms. "Then pay it." "I can't," he barked. "My boss cut my hours and the bonus I was promised got delayed, and I thought—" He stopped, frustration tightening his jaw. "I thought she left some money around." Jessica stepped closer, anger rising. "So what now?
You said we'd be fine. You said she barely paid anything anyway. Derek whipped her off. Relax. The old manager liked Sarah. I'll just tell him I'm having a rough month. He always gave her extra time. He'll let it slide. Jessica scoffed under her breath. People only liked her because she acted all innocent. Derek nodded without shame. Exactly. She made people feel sorry for her. It bought us time. His arrogance filled the room like thick smoke. If Sarah had heard him, her heart would have broken all over again. But she wasn't the same woman he threw out, and he was about to find that out. As they continued arguing, a faint rustling sound came from the hallway. Jessica heard it first. What was that? Derek shrugged. Probably neighbors. A moment later, something slid under the front door. A crisp, formal envelope. Its white edge peeked across the floor like a warning. Jessica's eyes widened. Derek, what is that? He frowned, walked over, and bent to pick it up. Her voice trembled. Is that an eviction notice? Derek tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. His eyes skimmed the first few lines, and his face drained of all color. What does it say? Jessica whispered, stepping closer. Derek swallowed hard. It's from the new active owner of the building, he said slowly. It says the lease is in arrears. We have 72 hours to pay everything we owe, or management will begin termination. Jessica gasped. New owner? Who? Derek shook his head, disbelief tightening his voice. I don't know. It lists a property trust name, no person listed. His hands trembled slightly. For the first time, Derek looked worried. Really worried. Across the city, sitting quietly in the town car, Sarah stared at the lights outside. She wasn't smiling. She was thinking, planning, becoming someone Derek never believed she could be. In the stillness of the car, her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Harrison. There's one more document I'm sending to the property manager. It carries your company name. He'll see it. Tomorrow would change everything.
Derek ripped open the new envelope with the arrogance of a man who believed the world still bent around him. What now? He muttered, already annoyed, already convinced it was something he could talk his way out of. He'd ignored the first warning, telling Jessica, they always threaten, they never do anything. He still believed he could charm or bully his way through. But the moment his eyes landed on the letterhead, his breath caught. His hand froze in the air, his face drained of all color. The intensity of the shock hit him so hard that Jessica noticed immediately. "Derek?" she asked, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. The sound in the room changed. It became tight, sharp, almost hollow, like the air was holding still, waiting for him to speak. Derek swallowed once, eyes locked on the top of the page, printed boldly. Sarah A. Bennett Property Group, acting owner and trustee. Jessica frowned. Who's that? Another manager? Nathan's lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Finally, a whisper. Bennett. The words slipped from his mouth like fear. He took a small step back, gripping the letter harder as if trying to crush the truth out of it. No, he murmured. No, that can't be her. It can't. Jessica looked confused. What are you talking about? Who is Bennett? Derek stared at the page like it could somehow change if he blinked enough times. Bennett as in Bennett Industries, he finally choked out. Her last name was Bennett. Jessica's confusion slowly shifted into panic. Wait, Bennett Industries? The Bennett family? The ones with all the money? Derek snapped. Old money. Massive money. Jessica's mouth dropped open. You're saying Sarah, your Sarah, was one of them? Derek paced, hands shaking. Flash. A memory hit him. Sarah refusing to walk into an expensive store, saying softly, I don't need anything from here. Flash. The first time he asked about her parents, and she avoided the question, voice trembling as she changed the subject. Flash. The elegant ring she wore during their engagement, tiny diamonds so perfect he assumed it was fake because she couldn't afford more. She always hid it under a glove in winter. Flash. Her notebook filled with drawings of luxury buildings, elaborate angles, styles she shouldn't have known for someone poor. Flash. The day he moved in with her, she told him rent was handled. He never saw a landlord's name on any notice. He never asked. Sarah wasn't poor. Sarah wasn't weak. Sarah wasn't dependent. She was a Bennett, and he threw her out with $20. Derek felt his throat close. His smugness, everything he built on his false confidence, shattered like glass. "She hid everything from me," he whispered, voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and terror. Jessica blinked rapidly. "So she's the new active owner of the building? Your old rental building?" Derek pressed a hand to his forehead. "Yes," he said. "She owns the company that controls this place." Jessica staggered backward. "Derek, if she owns this building, then we're not just late on rent. We're late to her." Silence crashed into the room. For the first time ever, Derek wasn't arrogant, he wasn't smug, he wasn't calm. He was scared, desperate, shaken to his core. He bolted for the door and ran down the hallway, with Jessica behind him. His heart pounded as he reached the elevator, punching the buttons repeatedly like force would make it move faster. When it finally opened, he rushed inside and stabbed the lobby button. The ride felt painfully slow. Every second stretched, every breath felt heavy, every thought screamed, "What have I done?" When the doors finally slid open, he hurried towards the front desk, nearly tripping over himself. The new manager, a calm, older man in a crisp suit, looked up from his clipboard. His name tag read, "Mr. Collins." Derek slammed the letter on the counter. "There's been a mistake, a huge one. I need to talk to the owner right now." Mr. Collins studied him with an unreadable expression. "No mistake," he said. "The owner's company finalized control of the building early this morning." Derek leaned in closer, desperate. "Then tell me who it is. I need to speak to them." Mr. Collins didn't blink. "You will," he said, calmly. Derek's chest tightened. "When?" he pressed. The manager's eyes flipped towards the entrance doors, where the sound of approaching footsteps echoed. "The owner," he said, "is arriving in person for a site visit and final notice." Derek slowly turned around, his heart thundering, towards the glass door sliding open, towards the figure stepping inside. The familiar silhouette in the doorway would end his illusions forever. The lobby doors slid open with a sharp hiss, so sudden, so commanding that every head in the room lifted at once. Derek spun toward the entrance, breath catching, heartbeats slamming violently in his chest. And there she was, Sarah. Not the Sarah he threw out, not the Sarah who cried on doorsteps, not the Sarah who walked away with only $20 in her hand. This Sarah stood tall, her hair pulled back neatly, her clothes elegant but simple, quiet wealth, quiet confidence. Her posture straight, calm, steady, like a woman who no longer feared anyone's opinion. A woman reborn. Derek stumbled forward. "Sarah, honey, please listen." His voice cracked, his hands shook, his entire world felt suddenly fragile. Sarah didn't flinch. She simply looked at him with steady eyes. Eyes that once adored him, now simply understood him. "Mr. Collins," the building manager stepped respectfully aside, recognizing her authority instantly. He inclined his head slightly. "Ms. Bennett?" he said. "Welcome." Jessica, who had crept down behind Derek to watch the scene unfold, stopped in her tracks. Panic rushed over her face. She whispered into her phone, voice trembling. "Can someone pick me up right now?" She already knew. This was the end of them. This was the end of her security, her plans, her illusion. Sarah walked forward slowly, every movement controlled, every step deliberate. She barely looked at Jessica, just long enough for the mistress to feel the sting of shame. Derek reached out as if to touch Sarah's arm. She stepped back. The rejection cut him deeper than he expected. "Sarah, please," he begged. "I made mistakes, I know I did, but we can fix things. I didn't know who you were." She spoke calmly. "That was the point, Derek." Her voice wasn't cold, it wasn't angry. It was simply done. He swallowed, desperate. "Just give me a chance. I didn't mean what I said. I was under stress. Jessica, she meant nothing." Behind him, Jessica instantly snapped. "Really?" But even she knew it didn't matter anymore. Derek ignored her. He focused only on Sarah, the woman he now realized he needed more than breath. "Sarah," he pleaded, "I didn't know you were—" She lifted a hand, stopping him. "I wasn't asking you to stay because of money. I wanted you because I believed we were building something real." Nathan looked shattered. "But you weren't, not even a little." His knees buckled slightly as she reached into her bag and pulled out a clean envelope. She held it out. He stared. "What is that?" he whispered. "Divorce papers," she said simply. "Already signed. I've taken care of the part that depends on me. All that's left is your signature." Derek's breath collapsed inside him. He looked at the envelope like it burned to touch. No, please, Sarah." Behind him, Mr. Collins cleared his throat and walked over to the bulletin board. He penned up a document with a firm, final motion. "Final notice to vacate within 24 hours, issued under the terms of lease for repeated non-payment and ignored written warnings." Derek turned around slowly, horror spreading across his face as his eyes locked onto the paper. His name, Jessica's name, the ad house number, the deadline. He staggered back towards Sarah, desperate, broken. "Sarah, please, don't let them kick me out. You can fix this. You're the owner." She met his gaze with painful honesty. "I am," she said, "and that's why I won't fix it." Derek shook, his voice cracking. "I'll change, I promise. I'll be better. Please don't do this to me." Sarah took a breath, a soft, human breath. "I didn't do this," she replied gently. "You did." Her words landed quietly, not cruel, not vengeful, just true. Derek dropped to his knees right there in the lobby, tears forming, hands clasped together. "Sarah, please." But she was no longer his to beg. She turned toward the elevator. Jessica slipped away toward the door, already gone, already abandoning him, proof of the life he had chosen. The elevator doors opened. Sarah stepped inside. For a single moment, she looked at Derek, not with anger, but with calm, final distance. The doors slid closed. His broken reflection shrank into the metal until it disappeared completely. As the elevator rose, Sarah exhaled slowly. Some people only learn your value when you stop giving them discounts. The elevator dinged softly. Her new beginning had arrived. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you treat yourself. Never let anyone convince you that you are less than you are. And never be afraid to walk away from people who don't see your value.